And welcome to Tackle the Board. My name is Chris Exusion. You can find me at Chris Ebom on Twitter. And we're into the second show of the season of Tackle the Board on Heat Ratio. And my co-host, Russ Reese, Vegas line reader. How you doing, man?
I'm excited, man. Finally get to do some research on some real games now and adding the whole aspect of college football this year. Excited to get break down every game for college football. You pick some plays and I pick some free picks to hook up for everybody to make somebody some money this week.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's week 0. It's kind of the appetizer of college football. And we got some games that aren't the biggest names in the world, but you know what? They're games to bet we can take advantage of. And that's all we're about, making money. And then on top of that, we got the NFL coming around. We're going to be getting into that in a couple weeks. Week 1 is upon us. But before then, we got to get ready for fantasy football, right, Russ?
Oh, definitely. Everybody loves fantasy football. And definitely excited. We got a special guest on. Anthony Cervino is going to be coming on at the Real NFL Guru, the creator of the Fantasy Football Face-Off. He's going to be on. So definitely excited to get him on here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Anthony on. He's a lead betting analyst, fantasy analyst for the Game Day NFL. He's just the fantasy guy. We had to get him on, local Jersey guy, so we like that as well. And we got these season-long fantasy coming up. So we need somebody in here to steer us in the right direction. But without further ado, I'd like to bring on Anthony. Anthony, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome, guys. How are you?
Great.
Doing fantastic. So Anthony, we're getting into fantasy football season. You know, we got the season longs, we got the drafts going on here. You're the guy that does everything when it comes to fantasy. You do your fffaceoff.com, and you got the live streaming Twitter. I've watched it, YouTube, all really good info. And we're looking to pick your brain here pretty much. We got drafts coming up. We need your help. So without further ado, I want to see what you lead off with when it comes to this fantasy football season.
If I'm going into a fantasy draft, I normally like to pound running backs early. Wide receivers incredibly deep. So depending on where you're picking, like my sweet spot this year is at the top of the draft. I like from picks 3 to pick 6. And you can usually get one of the running backs that aren't taken at the top of the draft. I've been getting Ezekiel Elliott, who is my 3rd ranked running back. I think he's could have one of the best seasons of his career. I think he's going to bounce back this season. I've gotten him as late as the 7th pick a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Ezekiel Elliott coming off really not a great season for the most part, but I think he's in shape now. You got Dak Prescott. That offense is going to be booming. I talked about him last week. I really liked him to win the NFC East. I saw Dak Prescott. He was throwing really well. He's looking good. And Zeke was praising him pretty much during the practice. So I like the fact you brought up Ezekiel Elliott because I expect a big bounce back year from him.
You know, Zeke didn't pass the eye test last year. A lot of it was Dak Prescott being out of the lineup, and a lot of it was the offensive line issues. Zeke is one of the best follow the block rushers until he gets to that 2nd and 3rd level, and then he can turn it on. Last year, when you're down, I mean, before the season, they had Travis Frederick retired, the center. You had La'el Collins. I believe he was hurt either the first week or going into the season, into the preseason, and also Tyron Smith. Between Frederick and Smith, perennial all-pro players when healthy, their big losses. La'el Collins, never an all-pro, but started almost like every game for the past 4 years. You're losing 3 of those pieces. Then in season, another all-pro, Zach Martin, misses time. So Tony Pollard actually looked like the better back, but it's still Ezekiel Elliott because once he did get to that 2nd level last season, which wasn't a lot, he was still the number 9 running back in evaded tackles and number 10 back in yards created. It was just a matter of getting past that 1st level.
Yeah, you also had Ben DiNucci played a couple games, and then you had Andy Dalton coming in there. So definitely affects his stats there too.
As far as the wide receiver core, I feel like Ridley is kind of the sexy name right now based on what projected stats he has without Julio Jones right now. Do you feel like he's the cream of the crop right now when it comes to wide receiver, or is there other guys you're looking at that could really overexceed his expectations?
Cream of the crop in terms of my number 1 ranked wide receiver. I think you can make a case for Calvin Ridley finishing the year as the overall wide receiver 1. But in my rankings right now, I still have the Tyreek Hill, Devontae Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs routing out my top three. Calvin Ridley's at number 4. And a lot of it's because even with Ridley and Julio Jones there, Matt Ryan, when Julio Jones was not on the field, he didn't look like the same quarterback. So I'm anxious to see how Matt Ryan's deployed not only by the new head coach Arthur Smith, but can he turn Calvin Ridley, who is a former top 10 pick, I believe, into that alpha wide receiver 1.
Yeah, Matt Ryan, he's been his last 2 seasons haven't been too great. So that's why I'm kind of curious. Ridley, I'm terrible at second round wide receivers. I took Godwin last year, and that killed my whole season last year. So I'm very cautious now on wide receivers, unless they're a stud like Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill, like end of the first round. I can't trust any second, third round wide receivers.
If that the second round wide receiver, and it's you stick to the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb looks every much of a special player. I have him ranked as my wide receiver 6, and CeeDee Lamb's going to in the back of the second into the third round. And if he pops, he could really explode this year. And there's a lot of targets to be had in this Dallas offense, but they're projected to be one of the top teams in pace of play. They're projected to be one of the top offenses in the league. So I'm all in on CeeDee Lamb. And you got to figure Amari Cooper, as good as he is, he's always banged up with something, even though he doesn't miss a lot of games. He's always in and out of the game itself.
Yeah. I had another question for you. The Justin Herbert. I usually like to find guys that he was about 9th or 10th ranked last year at the end of the season, but he didn't even have a full lineup most of the games. He has a bunch of weapons this season. I was curious where he's going in the draft right now.
Justin Herbert right now, I have him ranked as my QB 6 ahead of guys like Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow. There are times I want to move Herbert back, but you can get Justin Herbert into the middle of the single-digit rounds, going towards the back, depending on who you're drafting with and how they feel about Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert, he has the weapons, right? Josh Palmer, the rookie, is emerging as a quality wide receiver 3 in that offense. You have Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler's healthy. But what impresses me the most about what the Chargers had done this offseason was emphasizing the offensive line. That's always been their Achilles heel. They drafted Stanley in the first round. They brought over Corey Linsley from Green Bay, one of the best centers in football. They took Aaron Rodgers center from him. And they also have Brian Bulaga, who they took from Green Bay a few years ago. This offensive line is going to take a huge step forward, and that's only going to help Justin Herbert.
Yeah, as far as that's funny that you brought that up, because their offensive line has always been terrible. I remember the Eagles would have some terrible linemen. There was Justice Winslow. I forget what his name was. The guy from USC back in the day. He went over there. He was a hot mess, and it was just like they always never addressed offensive line. And I found it pretty interesting. You actually have Herbert ahead of Aaron Rodgers.
I do, but I could see myself because I'll adjust my rankings leading up to when the Fantasy Pros ECR locks in week 1. So I could see myself maybe putting Rodgers, bumping him up a little bit, but not much.
There's a lot of steam, though. I always take a look back, and there's always the top 10 guys in a position. Usually 5 of them in that top 10 usually bounce out of there. Like if you see the top 10 rushers in the first round, if you're at the back end, you usually get an injured running back and he's out for half the season. Like you get a lot of those late first round guys that don't even make it. I've been noticing just looking back in history. We had Michael Thomas. He was the leading guy the year before, and he got injured, killed someone's season. There's just so many guys that happens just like that.
Yeah, so I wanted to get into the position, the sexiest position of all football, the quarterback. Where are we targeting where we can get good value at the quarterback position when it comes to drafting?
If you're a late round quarterback, I know this is one of the years where I can make a legitimate case for 5 quarterbacks to finish number 1. When you're talking about Dak, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Outside of that, then you have your next tier of Herbert, Rodgers, Wilson, and Tom Brady. Maybe we put Burrow in there if he can stay healthy. They're almost like the Cincinnati Bengals to me, are a cheaper version of the Dallas Cowboys. But that sweet spot of value, you can get a guy like Matthew Stafford, who a lot of people are higher on Stafford than me. But you can get him in the 9th, 10th, 11th round. The guy I really like in that range is Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill accounted over 40 total touchdowns between rushing and passing last year. And now you add Julio Jones to that mix.
No, absolutely. And my boy Mitch is checking in. He's pretty much asking, is he the best value on the board, in your opinion?
Ryan Tannehill?
Yes.
As long as they don't veer, because they're going to have Todd Downing as their new offensive coordinator. And Arthur Smith was really the OC that unleashed Derrick Henry and gave him all the carries. They still emphasize Derrick Henry, and why not? They should. And it's not all on Ryan Tannehill. And then, I think Ryan Tannehill has legitimate top 6 quarterback upside.
Nice. Yeah, I had my eye on J.K. Dobbins. I was curious where he's going, what round.
People either like J.K. Dobbins or they don't value him because, well, it's Lamar Jackson. He's going to still run the ball, and there's not a lot of running back targets, so that devalues him in PPR. I'm pushing the chips on J.K. Dobbins. I'm getting him anywhere in the second, sometimes third round, which is tremendous value. But if you look at what the Baltimore Ravens did, I'm a big offensive line guy. They brought in Kevin Zeitler. They drafted Ben Cleveland, so that interior offensive line to me is set up to run the ball up the middle, down people's throats, and that's going to be J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Why I value J.K. Dobbins a hell of a lot more than Gus Edwards, because Gus Edwards has given us nothing as a receiver. There's no more Mark Ingram, and once they began phasing Mark Ingram out last year, that's when we saw J.K. Dobbins go on that late season run. I expect much of that, and almost all of the pass-catching targets for the running back position should go to J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, it seemed like last year with all that COVID and nobody having training camp, it was just a terrible year to have any kind of rookie. So even what you were saying with CeeDee Lamb, he could easily have a breakout season just because all those rookies last year, no one really got going.
I mean, Justin Jefferson was tremendous, but
yeah,
I see him, 1,400 yards last year. That's not happening again.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, we were buying high on him before, and now we're selling high on him. So I think that's
what I'm all
important.
about with buying high and selling low. I just love finding like Josh Allen. Like I would not take Josh Allen just because he had the most points in fantasy football for quarterbacks. That's just something I avoid. That's what happened with Mahomes a couple of years ago. He slipped back down, and then you had Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
Look, he went from 1 to he was number 1 ranked in the whole and the top 100 in the NFL. He was number 1 fantasy quarterback. So
who's this year's number 1? It's to me, it's Kyler or Dak. Okay,
very nice. I was curious what your thoughts were on Kyler. I like that.
I love Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray was actually on track to, I don't want to say shatter, but come very close or exceed what Lamar Jackson did as a rusher in his MVP year. Kyler Murray had 11 rushing touchdowns. 10 of them came up to week 11 when he injured his shoulder against Seattle. And Kyler was never really the same. It seemed like he was a little bit more hesitant to run. I could see Kyler Murray, if he doesn't get banged up like that, and he didn't miss games because of it, but it changed him as a player. With the receiving weapons they added, they also added James Conner, A.J. Green to that team, Rondale Moore. Kyler Murray, you can make a big-time case that he's the number 1 quarterback.
That's very true. He's so explosive, and you're right about that injury because end of the season, I remember they lost about 3 games in a row. They just started getting sloppy, and they were getting worn down, so definitely a solid quarterback. I think he'll be 1 or 2 for sure.
So as far as quarterback goes, tell me if I'm crazy or not. I have a mindset in the back of my head over here. I'm going to be drafting all their positions besides quarterback, and I'm kind of banking on taking Jameis Winston in the back end. What are your thoughts about Jameis Winston with the LASIK? He's got the weapons. I mean, I don't know. I have a feeling he's going to actually have a decent little year with the Saints, and I'm not worried about the backup and everything. Taysom, I think he's kind of a gadget guy for the most part. I think this is Winston's job, and I feel like I can wait for him and then just load up the rest of my team.
You can get a lot better than Jameis. I mean, you could go that route and still draft like a guy like maybe you get lucky Justin Fields falls because he's out the starter. Like I'd rather have Ryan Fitzpatrick than Jameis Winston right now. You bring up weapons. There's no weapons in New Orleans. There's Alvin Kamara. We saw Troutman get carted off the field, and we didn't even know what Adam Troutman was. He hasn't really had playing time. Michael Thomas, we don't know if or when he'll be back. Like
that's a big.
The Saints are going to be a bad team this year. To me,
he's just trying to get under my skin because I took the Saints under team wins. So he's
me too.
I'm poking the bear a little bit. But I do like the Cowboys this year, so that was that. I
Yeah.
like what you're talking about with the Cowboys here.
I'm also curious where Trey Lance is going because I'm also thinking about waiting on quarterback and seeing where he's actually going.
Trey Lance is going all over the place.
Yeah.
To me, you can go and draft. Let's say if you want to get a Jalen Hurts or Ryan Tannehill, and then draft Trey Lance a couple rounds later, he'll eventually take over that starting job for Jimmy Garoppolo. Unless the 49ers play like they did a few years ago and Garoppolo led them to the Super Bowl, that's the only thing that's going to keep Trey Lance.
I'm a firm believer that I think Trey Lance is definitely going to be the starter. I just feel like they need to win now with that team. Why would he move up in the draft to actually get him? And I don't know. We'll see. Only time will tell.
So there's a running back that I'm looking at as well, being from the local area and everywhere, Miles Sanders. He didn't get a whole lot of touches running the ball per se. He was averaging over 5 yards per carry. Do you see a big uptick from him? Maybe would you reach for a guy like this with the running back situation, or is this a guy that you kind of just want to fall into place with you?
I would let Miles Sanders fall to me before I reach for him. And I'm already hearing the rumors that Boston Scott, if you look at, how the running back touches were distributed in training camp, Boston Scott was extremely involved. Look at the head coach, Nick Sirianni, coming from the Colts. Nick Sirianni utilized 2, sometimes 3 running backs. And that's how I see this Eagles backfield unfolding. But Miles Sanders, I have him ranked as my 18 to 20 in that range. That's a great value for Miles Sanders. He's going to have his big games where he's going to pop, but I definitely would not take him over. I would take Gibson, Mixon, Dobbins, Swift, Montgomery, and CEH all over Miles Sanders. Maybe even James Robinson.
Nice.
There's just a lot of uncertainty in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
The new coaching situation. We don't know what kind of offense he's really going to run. I'm just looking based on the kind of talent. I guess if he's on a different team, maybe he might be ranked a little bit higher on the draft board, but there is just a lot of uncertainty there.
I had Miles Sanders ranked as in the back of the first round last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much I think of Miles Sanders, just that the usage wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. Those are the type of guys that just kill your season right there,
Yeah.
No. What about on tight ends? I'm kind of curious, but take out Kelsey, Waller, Kittle. Do you have any guys that you think's going to be a breakout kind of player that can get you some good value?
He's not a big value because he's going, a few rounds after Kelsey, Waller, and Kittle. But TJ Hawkinson could be that next big time breakout. Jared Goff's going to target the tight end a lot. TJ Hawkinson is by far the best. Probably the best pass catcher they have in Detroit right now. They just have a bunch of guys at wide receiver, and I actually like the Lions offense more than most. It's going to be run-centric, and that's really good for Jared Goff because when Jared Goff had Todd Gurley, that's when he was playing his best football. So if you don't want to spend a second-round pick or a first-round pick on one of the top-tier tight ends, Hawkinson would be the next one. If you want to talk about value, I'm kind of in on Tyler Higbee. Now that Gerald Everett's in Seattle, followed Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator to the Seattle Seahawks. This is Tyler Higbee's tight end room. And we know that Matthew Stafford coming over to the Rams from Detroit, he liked to target his tight ends, whether it was Ebron or Hawkinson. So Higbee could be that guy. He disappointed last year, which is going to drive down his price point. I'm buying back into Tyler Higbee, and I just mentioned him, Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee cannibalized each other's fantasy football ceilings because they were both used. Now Everett's going to go with Russell Wilson with his old offense or his offensive coordinator following Waldron over there. And we know that when Wilson had an athletic tight end and Jimmy Graham through the years, that tight end position was extremely valuable in fantasy. And I think we can get the same out of Gerald Everett.
Nice.
So it was funny that you brought up the Detroit Lions. I was actually kind of looking at them a little bit as well. Deandre Swift. I know he got banged up a little bit and everything. What are your opinions on Deandre Swift?
I like DeAndre Swift. I was extremely high on Swift coming out last year. I had him ranked as my number 1 rookie back, and people thought I was crazy. And I was fading Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which looks like the right move. But Swift didn't get a lot of touches, and I'm pulling up the numbers now. He didn't get a lot of touches per game. But in terms of a fantasy return, I believe he gave us at least 11 PPR points in all but 3 games.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So
What
that's a
about-
solid floor. I mean, this is a
Mhm.
guy who was getting, he didn't see double-digit carries until week 6. Then he goes back to the single digits, and he went on a little bit of a run. He never had more than 16 carries in a game and really did the most of his damage as a pass catcher.
Nice. Yeah. What about these like second round guys? Is there any guys that you don't trust in the second round that's going with running backs or even wide receivers that you, if they were sitting there and you had to take them, but you just didn't, you just want to avoid them at all costs?
If it's a trust factor, Joe Mixon, and I like Joe Mixon a lot. He's somebody I don't exactly trust, but I wouldn't exactly fade him. I'm a little bit worried about Saquon Barkley and his health. But my bigger trust factor issues come into that third round with guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You're either in or out on Helaire, and he's already banged up a little bit. And the Chiefs, they revamped the offensive line, but I can see Jerick McKinnon and Darrell Williams being a little bit more involved than what people think. Also, Najee Harris. I'm out on Najee Harris. I hope, it's not about the player. It's about the situation in Pittsburgh. I think as his career goes on, maybe next year they fix their offensive line and get a quarterback who can actually throw a deep ball. Then Najee Harris opens up. What we are buying into right now with Najee Harris is projected touches. He's going to get all the touches and all the receptions, but I think Najee Harris, and this could come back and bite me, he's this year's Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm thinking too. Yeah, and I hate these guys, like you said, bad offensive line, and I also hate guys that are just on bad teams. Just terrible lines. You don't know what's going to happen, so I try to avoid those guys.
They're returning only one starter from last year's Pittsburgh.
Wow,
yep.
Offensive lineman.
That's not good.
Thing what people don't realize. The offense and defensive lines of teams. That's basic. That's all of football right there, and. People don't look into that. They just look at all the skill positions. So definitely makes sense.
Well, Anthony, thank you again for coming on, giving us some good knowledge for the fantasy world. I love daily fantasy. I love season, but I'm still always learning. Our wheelhouse is the betting world, but we always love to get a guy like you on here, especially a local guy.
Before he leaves, I just want to see who's his biggest sleeper late rounds. Who's he got marked down?
Yeah,
who's he got marked down as his late sleeper?
Good. I need to know this.
One late sleeper. If I had to give you one, the one I am getting all the time, and you can get this guy for free. I like Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Okay.
Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he has the quarterback. And the only thing missing from Scantling's game is drops. He drops the ball a lot. But if you look what Green Bay brought in, they drafted Amari Rodgers a couple of rounds into the NFL draft. Randall Cobb's a washed slot guy. Marquez Valdes-Scantling last year, he was number 1 in yards per reception, number 6 in yards per target, number 10 in target quality rating, and how many deep balls? He was 12th in deep targets with 22. Last year, he gave us, and you can get MVS for free this fantasy football draft season. He gave us 5 games in the double digits, and his worst game was 17 points.
That's what I like to hear right there. That's why we got you on here. Because I can do all the studying in the world, and you just flip of a switch have all those stats for me.
Absolutely. But now, since we got that out of the way, and we got some good last info, I'm glad Russ brought that out to our attention over here for especially everyone listening as well. Thank you again. He is Anthony Cervino. He's the leading betting fantasy analyst of At the Game Day NFL, and you can find him on his show at FF Faceoff on Twitter, YouTube, and of course on fffaceoff.com. Anthony, would love to have you on again for DFS because I love those DFS, sweats on Sunday.
Absolutely.
We're going to need to get you on again.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for coming on, man.
See you guys later, man.
All right, later on. All right, that was great. We had Anthony on, Anthony Cervino, our fantasy guy here. Great info. Good little sneaky plays here. I think I'm weighing on quarterback personally because I think there's just too many good quarterbacks, and I think you can kind of pick and choose your spots. I think the position players is where it's at.
And the thing is, we had him on here talking fantasy football. I could literally just keep talking all night. I was losing track of the time.
I know that's why I lead this ship over here. I got to make sure we're on pace, we're on time.
I was getting in the zone, man.
I know you're locked in, but we got some good info. We're gonna have him on again, especially for DFS because I love the DFS game, especially on Sundays. The bets are in. And the DFS, we're sweating out the lineups. Always a lot of fun, and I want to get an edge, and I think Anthony can give that to us.
Definitely.
Absolutely. But hey, football is finally upon us, Russ.
College
Week
football.
0. College football, the appetizer of the college football season. There's 4 games we got here. There was a 5th one thrown out there, but we got the line late. We're not going to deal with it. It was a San Jose State game. I'm not too concerned about it. But we got 4 other big games, Russ. I'm going to dive in first over here because I did a write-up. It's going to come out later out this week. Spoiler alert. It's a game no one's really talking about. It's pretty much the unknown game. I don't even know if it's on TV.
Are you surprised that no one's talking about it?
No, I'm not, because the team's below. But we have great advantages with this game. And I've been doing a lot of work with this over here. And this is the UTEP at New Mexico State game. UTEP is an 8.5-point favorite. It's gone up on some books as high as 10. It's going crazy right now. And the over-under, it was around 56.5. It dropped down to 54. And I think it's making its return back up to 56 again. But what I've seen from this game, for the most part, this is going to be a completely lopsided game. It's a body bag game, Russ. You got triple revenge with the UTEP Miners. They're favored by so many points. How many times have you seen the UTEP Miners be favored by this many points? You can even think of it.
I know. Yep. I saw that you had your games that you were going to check out, and I was checking out my games. I took a quick glance at your game, and I was like, that's a big difference in spread from the previous year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the main thing it comes down to is experience at the end of the day. And the UTEP Miners, they got that experience. They're the ones that bring everything back. They're the ones that have the quarterback play, the wide receiver play, their defense. They're bringing a lot of people back. Hardison is their quarterback. He has a really good arm. Coach Dimmel is very excited about him and his progression this year. They bring back their 2 stud wide receivers that he loved a lot in Justin Garrett and Jacob Coing. They combined for 1,200 yards and 6 TDs in just 8 games alone. If I didn't bring that up, I don't think anybody would really know this about the Miners.
Oh, definitely. Definitely, you know more info on that game than me for that one. So just by me, I kind of love reading the spread. So looking at that spread, seeing the big difference, I would definitely lean that way with the favorite being that large.
And on top of that, I got to talk about New Mexico State. I mean, if you want to know about the Grec of the Grec over here, they didn't even play 2020 because of COVID. They're returning 0 starters on defense. 0. 0 starters. That's unheard of. That's legendary.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I don't think I've ever seen it either. It is horrible. No. And if you really want to know what they've done of late, they had a couple spring games against some FCS schools. Tarleton State lost outright, 17-43, 7.5-point favorites, outright loser. Then they played Dixie State. That was a nail biter, 36-29. Is
that a high school team?
It might as well be a high school team this morning. Dixie State. So these guys, they don't even know what's going on here. And they got Jonah Johnson, who's absolutely terrible at quarterback. He averaged like maybe 150 yards passing. He got 3 picks the first game. This offense is horrible. There's no offensive line. The defense is just Swiss cheese. This line is high for a reason, Russ. Another play that I really like, which is actually my favorite play here, is the UTEP over 32.5 minus 120. They're going to put up points, UTEP. They got a lot of experience behind them. This defense literally has no starters. I know it's at New Mexico State. I really don't care. I think they're going to put up a bunch of points. At least I think a 40 burger is going to be put up on them for the most part. If you want to play UTEP minus 5.5, I think that's great as well. But my favorite play, the play that I'm locking in, my favorite play of the week is over 32.5 UTEP. With that kind of experienced offense on that side, Dimmel's got a lot of good experience that coming back that the quarterback's already comfortable with. They're just going to make a lot of noise. And their defense has been pretty good too with UTEP. They bring back their top 5 tacklers on the D-line. And it's just going to be it. There's just too much experience here. It's just experience and no experience and just a complete year off. And we're going to take advantage of it, Russ.
Awesome, man. So I'm going to jump into mine. And I thought my game, I thought I had the worst team in the country. It sounds like you might have the worst team.
No,
in the
I
country.
definitely did. No doubt.
Yeah. So I'll have to definitely check out whose team is worse here. So I got the Connecticut at Fresno State minus 27.5, 62.5 is the over under here. I really don't think there's anyone out there that's actually betting Connecticut in this game. I just do not see it.
No.
This team also did not play last year. 2 years ago, they had 128th ranked defense out of 130 teams. They gave up 40.5 points per game on defense. They were also 120th in offense. They averaged 18.9 points per game. They're facing a very experienced Fresno State team. They returned 20 starters here. Minus 27.5 is a lot of points. I'm usually not a fan of these type of games. So what I'm going to do here is actually take the under on the team total for Connecticut. It should be around 18 points here. 2018, Fresno was the last time they had a nice experienced team. And the last time they were favored in that year, they were favored by minus 27 and minus 32. In those two games, they gave up 3 points and they gave up 13 points in those two games. They went 1-1 against the spread in those games, 48-3 and 31-13. So again, don't trust the big spreads. Not trusting having to trust Fresno to put up 45 to 50 points on the first game of the season. So definitely think they'll play good enough defense against a sloppy Connecticut team who they're not going to have anybody from last year. They didn't play games, so there's definitely going to be some rust on the first game of the season. So give me Connecticut under 18 points there. I think that's going to be a great play.
I think it's a great play too. UConn's offense is absolutely atrocious. Speaking of their defense, the secondary is god awful. They can't guard any wide receiver. Most of the secondary is all freshmen and sophomores. The only bright part of this UConn team is Kevin Mensah. He's rushed over 1,000 yards, but he did it with 226 attempts. I mean, that's a lot of attempts. He eventually got there. The offensive line consists of 2 returning starters. So that goes to
you're saying Connecticut, right?
Connecticut. UConn is only bringing back 2 starters on the offensive
one of the games they played Massachusetts and put up a ton of points. So I think that was like that was probably his whole stats, half his stats in that game.
Absolutely. And that's padding the stats, as we call it over there. But
he had like a Chase Claypool kind of day or whatever.
Yes.
All his stats in one game.
Yeah, and absolutely. So as far as Fresno State goes, Jay Connor, he's in his second year. He came out of Washington. He's very experienced. He gets all his big production back from his wide receivers. Like his whole core is completely coming back. I think it's like 5 guys that were his top wide receivers. They're all coming back. The running back Rivers is a senior. He's coming back. He's averaging over 5 yards. There's really no excuse for this offense to really click. So if I had to take a play, I like your under on the UConn points a lot because I don't think they're going to score at all. I like the first half play, minus 15.5. If they're not going to really score, they're not going to score in the first half. And I think they're going to put up more than 2 touchdowns in the first half. I think over 15.5. They'll be lucky to get a field goal there. So give me the first half of Fresno State 15.5. But I really like your under there with UConn.
Yeah, because I'm thinking if Connecticut scores over 18 points, Fresno State definitely, they're not covering that game. So I think they're going to play good enough defense on the first game of the season, especially with all those returning starters playing. You have a solid defense playing a team that's going to be sloppy on offense. It's going to be a disaster for Connecticut in that game on offense.
Absolutely. But we're going to get into Big Ten country. This is like the highlight game of week 0 over here.
Finally, there we go.
We got Nebraska at Illinois, Champaign. Nebraska, the line I was seeing here was 7.5. They're laying. The over-under is 55. Nebraska, Scott Frost, the darling of the Big Ten. He had that great run with UCF. Adrian Martinez, trying to revive his career. Big rusher, thrower, all that stuff. Martinez's bigger problem is he had the second most fumbles of any FBS player in the country last year. He's very clumsy with that ball. He has the ability, but his head's just not there for the most part. On the defensive side of the ball, they do return 10 defensive starters, including the top 5 tacklers. Experiences in the linebacking core as well. JoJo Doman, he comes back. He led them in tackling. This is the best linebacking core that Frost has had. But I'm looking at Illinois over here. Brett Bielema, Wisconsin coach. I mean, he had that run with Arkansas.
That's who
Pushed
I
that
was,
off to the side.
I was butchering his name last week. He's the one I was like, what the hell's his name? I couldn't think of it. Yep.
It's tough. I butchered it on Fox Sports A Gambler earlier on the radio. I was just so pissed. But anyway, so I know that's funny you said that because I butchered it on the radio too. But I finally got it right. It took me just one go round. But anyway, we all know he's about the run game. He actually gets a lot of experience that comes into play. Lovie Smith left him a lot of stuff there. He's got a really experienced quarterback, transfer Brandon Peters. He played last year. He makes very good decisions, very good arm. He's a senior. You can rely on him. The running back core is fantastic for Illinois. It's led by Chase Brown and Mike Epstein, who averaged over 5 yards a carry. A very good running back core. That's something Bielema really can use. We know that's his bread and butter. And the offensive line is fantastic as well. I mean, everything just fits very well with this over here. The play that I'm looking for, I do like getting over a touchdown, but I really like the under 55. I think the run game is going to be established. I think Nebraska's defensive line can kind of hold their run game too. So it's going to be a battle back and forth, kind of a punt fest. And I think 55 it's one of the lower totals on the board, but rightfully so. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of scoring. There's going to be turnovers, field changes left and right. Bielema is a good coach. He's been in the Big Ten. He's been in big games in this conference. This isn't his first rodeo back at this conference. So give me the under 55.
Yeah, I like that. And I would say I would lean Illinois. It looks like that line is dropping pretty fast for Illinois. Looks like an Illinois line to me. And that does look like an over-under. I love a 55. That is an under number to me. So I have been hearing things about Illinois' linebackers are fast. And Blake Martinez, he's one of those guys. I feel like this is like his 5th year. I feel like he's been around forever, but he's only been here for like 3 years. But definitely fumble issues. I don't trust him at all. He's not explosive enough to
Adrian Martinez.
See a blowout. Yeah, the first game of the season, and it's a conference game. These guys know each other, so I can definitely see an ugly type of game. I could see probably like a 24-20 type of game, something like that.
If that.
Yep, exactly. So definitely a solid pick there. Going to jump into the last game here, Hawaii at UCLA. UCLA's at -17.5, -18, different lines, different sports books. The over-under's at 68.5. I actually like, when I first took a glance at this, I was like, I'm just going to take UCLA here. But I actually did some research on this. Hawaii, I like the +18 here. They have a new head coach last year, and they only returned 11 returning starters last year, and they still ended up winning a bowl game. So definitely the team's playing well for this coach. They're going to come into this season. They have big expectations. I've been hearing a lot of talk about how good their defense is going to be. Last year, they didn't even have their stud cornerback, Eugene Ford, last year. So he's going to be coming back to this defense. Definitely, when you think Hawaii, you don't think of any type of sort of defense. You just think all offense. So this Hawaii team is a little different now. They're going to play good enough defense. Hawaii struggled. There were only 3 games last year that they did struggle in. They were all against teams that were in the top 20 in defensive points per game. So what do you think when you see the Pac-12? They don't really play defense. So I could see UCLA. This game, I just see them playing to their competition, UCLA with Hawaii. Definitely like Hawaii here. +18 is a good enough amount of points to cover in a competitive game. So I'll definitely take Hawaii here.
So UCLA. All right. So they've been pretty touted for the most part. A lot of people like UCLA this year. This is Chip Kelly's 4th year. Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback. He had 12 passing TDs, 3 rushing TDs. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's got all the tools, all the weapons in the world. UCLA, they picked up a running back in the transfer portal, Zach Charbonnet. He rushed for 850 yards, 5 rushing yards per attempt out of Michigan. The entire offensive line pretty much returns for him. So with 73 career starts, I mean, there's a lot of experience in that O-line, which kind of feeds into Chip Kelly's kind of offense for the most part. There is a lot of experience on the defense, but as we know, especially being from this area and watching Chip Kelly up close and personal, he leaves this defense out and like pretty much out there for like 45 minutes, it seems like, because the offense is boom, boom, boom. we got to punt, and then we got to put our offense out there. So if the offense isn't scoring, then they're having issues. And as far as Hawaii goes, Todd Graham, that's the coach you're talking about. He was a guy that has been a great offensive mind, but you brought up a great point of the defense being a big standing point. And you know what? Their secondary is nasty. They bring 3 seniors back. This is going to be the best secondary in the Mountain West. Cortez Davis, he's the guy that's going to lead these guys in that secondary. The quarterback, Cordero, for Hawaii, he had a great year throwing over 2,000 yards, 14 TDs, something you expect out of a Todd Graham offense. I'm in the same boat as you, but I went the first half. I like the +10 with Hawaii. You're getting +10 with Hawaii. I believe me, I love your +18. I think it's going to be a lot closer game because of Hawaii's defense, which I don't think anyone's ever said in their entire life.
Yeah.
But I love the +18, and I'll double dip with the +10. I think this is going to be a close game, and I think the UCLA name is going to draw a lot of money. It's good. It's like an afternoon game, believe it or not. I thought it was going to be like kind of a night game because usually Hawaii's that catch-up game that everyone's trying to get their last bets in for. I believe it's like a 3 p.m. standard time game. I think it's kind of early. So I'm all about the Rainbow Warriors. +10 first half. I like it. I love your +18. We're not being fooled by this, Russ, not by the name.
Definitely. Yep. We definitely put our research in on these games. So once the season starts, we'll probably be finding some of the bigger games, but this was something that definitely jumped out to me because I didn't even think, just checking out the game, I was like, I'm not interested in this game too much. But after doing some research on it, definitely seems like a solid play to me.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for us this week. Week 0, we wanted to get you guys the right mindset when you're betting these games. I want to thank Anthony Cervino again for being on. Some great fantasy insight for all your drafting for your season long. We're going to have him on again for DFS so we can get our lineups in and make that extra cash on top of that betting money cash we're going to do. And guess what? Next week is going to be all college, man. It's all school time. School's in. We are going to be hitting college football hard next week. Where, like you said, we're going to be hitting the big games, the big bet games. Russ is going to be on top of that. I can't wait to hear from that. I'm going to see what I can do with that as well. And then I'm also going to have games I like as well, the games that you might not even be thinking about, the revenge tour games, the games that have these guys been getting beat up for years. We're going to get our revenge, and we're going to cash with it. And then we're going to find some other games as well. But we will hit on those big games you want to bet on Sunday night, the big ranked games. Don't you worry. We'll hit you up with all those. But you can find me at Chris E. Baum on Twitter. You can find Russ Reese at Vegas Line Reader. And you can find our show Tackle the Board on Heat Ratio Network and also our YouTube page as well. Russ, nice little week here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And make sure you guys... we appreciate you watching. Make sure you just like and subscribe if you can. Help out the show. And if you guys are watching this on Twitter, make sure you guys shoot us a retweet and to get our name out to more people so we can make more people money.
Absolutely. Let's go make that money, Russ.